live. Let's get that music going.
Hello, hello, hello.
Woo!
For those of you who weren't on our Instagram live before we started this, I decided to carve in my wine and poured a very, very large glass.
Ooh, let's see that very, very large glass.
Huge. Hold on.
That is a very large glass. Mine is very reasonable.
I just got so excited trying this out. It's like,
well, now that you've done it once, what do you think?
I think I missed a step.
Okay, well, you got to study those steps better.
I got to study my pictures of.
I bet you could look it up. I'm sure that
I watched a video.
You watched a video and you still didn't know what to do.
Yeah, I watched a video.
I am shocked.
It was like, it's so easy. And I'm like, ugh.
I'm always afraid that I'm going to break the needle whenever I do it. I'm like, oh, this is going to break.
I know, me too. I was afraid of that. And then there was like this warning sign that like the needle's sharp and it's got like a hand in there like injured. So I was like, oh my gosh. Well,
everybody, welcome to In Pour Taste, an irreverent guide to drinking wine. Caitlin, tell them what we're doing here.
Hi. So we are two best friends, normally, unfortunately, separated by distance. And we are working on bridging that gap together by meeting here, same time, same place, each week, drinking wine, talking to all of you. Thanks for being here.
And feeling fine.
Feeling fine. So, Britt.
So we started a new practice where one of us asks the other one a question. They don't know what the question is. We do spend a lot of time talking about what we're going to talk about on the episodes, but we try to leave a little bit for the imagination. So, Caitlin, I get to ask the question this week. Caitlin, what is like the most outrageous wine pairing that you've ever had that actually worked? That you're like, whoa, I never thought that would work. That sounds disgusting. Or, tell me.
Oh my gosh. Sometimes you stump me with, I have to say, I'm not one of those people who has had like, I don't have a great memory. And so sometimes I can't remember details like that.
Okay, so what's the greatest wine pairing you've ever had? How about that?
I do remember, and I mean, this is not like by any means like a weird and quirky pairing. This is actually like very classic, but I remember when I first learned that sparkling wine and salty foods went well together. And that was sort of mind blowing, even though like anybody who studies wine or pays any attention to wine pairings probably knows that already. But like potato chips and champagne or like something like that, popcorn and champagne. I remember being like, wow, I never thought that would work. I always thought it was like sweet pairings with sparkling stuff. So that's probably one where I just got real jazzed about it. Sauterne and foie. Is it foie and Sauterne?
It is.
Yeah. I remember the first time I had that and I was just so excited because I'd read so much about it and that was fantastic. Yeah. I don't know. Those are very classic and kind of boring. So
who cares? Why do you think they're classic? Because they're fucking awesome.
No, they are so good. So do you have one that comes to mind for you?
This question isn't about me.
No, I was drinking, or the other night I got myself some rolled tacos and I was drinking them with the Rock Cellars Chenin Blanc Pet Nat. And I feel like it was a great pairing. That was kind of weird, rolled tacos and Pet Nat, but delicious.
Nice. I mean, caviar and champagne, always a winner. Like,
yeah,
always. But I definitely have had like duck liver mousse with like Riesling that has been so good. Like just kind of I find that like liver mousses and like kind of like organ mousses, I know it's weird, or organ meat, it has a very like mineral quality to it, like almost like a chalkiness to it. And so I don't know, it's just a really good balance. But anyway, yeah. All right, Caitlin, what are we talking about today? We're not talking about Sauterne and foie, but
no, we are talking about Rioja. So we called this episode we called this episode a Rioja and a barrel walk into a bar. And probably by the end of this, you'll have a better idea of why. I'm really excited to talk about Rioja. There's so much to say. I won't jump into it too much now. But if you haven't already gotten your bottles open, start drinking. And hopefully we have some more people migrating over from Instagram, where I did a failed Instagram live attempt. And I hope we have our normal
Our
crew.
normal crew that just shows up. I see Chris Newman in the sliding into our DMs. Speaking of, let us know you're here. Let us know what you're drinking. We want to live vicariously through your comments. And also ask us questions throughout. That's why we do it on this platform, is really because we want to interact with you, because I'm sure we would probably do it on Instagram Live, but we really want to interact with you in a special way. So
Special way.
yeah, a special way.
Yes, pop those bottles. Tell us what you're drinking. So now that we're talking about Rioja, now that we told you to open your bottles, do you want a rundown of the show notes?
Previews, reviews, and what is it? Give me the last one. And transition statements? Yes, I would love a preview.
Okay, so first we are going to talk about our wines. We'll do that in a second. We're going to talk about some of the history and kind of a general overview of Rioja, which our lovely Britt is going to do. We're going to talk about some grapes and the characteristics that are common for those grapes. Talking about some aging requirements. Am I frozen? No. Okay. That should be
it's like sticking. Who knows? Like sometimes I'm always afraid it's me.
I know.
I think most of the time it's you, but like sometimes I'm like, maybe I'm the one who's thinks it's not me.
It's weird because my computer says full bars and then my StreamYard says 1 bar. So I can't figure out which
that bar show up in StreamYard.
I think it only shows up if you're in dire.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So then we're going to talk about aging requirements. Britt's going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about why should you drink Rioja. In case we haven't sold you on it already by that point, you will find out why you should drink Rioja. So, Britt, what are you drinking?
I'm so glad you asked. And thanks, Patricia. I see what Patricia's drinking. 2011. Hell yeah. 10-year-old wine. Nice. I am drinking a Rema Uri 2013 Reserva Rioja. This is coming from Alavesa. So Caitlin's really going to talk about kind of that a little bit more, like the different regions and what that means. But just to tell you a little bit about, what'd you say?
I said a little bit.
Okay, well, I'll touch on it then. This is a 85% Tempranillo, 10% Grenache, and 5% Graciano. The winemaker, it is a brother-sister team. So Telmo Rodriguez is the winemaker, and his sister is the viticulturist, or the like vineyard, is in charge of the vineyard. These are high altitude vines, so they're similar to like what's coming. They say that they're very similar to Nebbiolo. 2013 happened to be a really wet year. So this one, compared to previous vintages, is much higher in acid, but lower in alcohol. So it spent 20 months in oak barriques and then 5 years bottle aging. So it is like dancing that line of Grand Reserva. Like it could have been called a Grand Reserva almost. These are all estate grapes, which means they grow all of their own grapes. It's not that they're buying grapes from other places. Organic farming, low intervention, unfiltered, minimal SO2, indigenous yeasts. The average vine age is 40 years. And it was a really interesting story about Telma Rodriguez. So this vineyard was like ancient, like Cistern monks vineyard that they kind of like, after they left the region, they just like, it got abandoned. And so his father bought the vineyard, and Telma went to he went to Petrus in Bordeaux and studied there and like worked there, and then came back, and he told his dad, he was like, "Dad, I want to make great wine." And his dad's like, "No, we're going to make good wine, but we're going to make a great amount of good wine." And so he was like, well, then he went around and kept working in different projects, like rediscovering other vineyard sites that had kind of been left behind. And then in 2009, his dad was like, called him back, like, "Hey, come and take over. Like, it's time for you to take over." And he said, "Only if we're going to make great wine." And so he really like changed the practices that were happening there kind of transition to organic and kind of focusing less on production and more on quality. So really good wine, really like it's a benchmark wine for Rioja. Highly, highly recommend.
Awesome. Cool.
What are you drinking, Caitlin?
Sounds delicious. Okay, so I am drinking, I think Lauren has a picture. So I will have her pull that up. Oh my goodness. So it is, I think it's it's Viña Otoño Gran Reserva 2010. I guess that's probably a little tiny on the photo. But one thing I was learning as I was reading, and this just happens to be something that I bought a few years ago online. And I bought 2 bottles of them, and they were like $19 at the time. I don't know what they're worth now. I didn't look it up, and it's not been that long. No, but I think for a Gran Reserva, it's like $19 was a pretty fantastic deal. And and what I've been reading is 2010 is right now, people are saying it's the best vintage so far this century. So it's exciting to kind of think about like drinking a wine from a year that had really great wines, which that was happenstance. I didn't plan that or anything. The vineyards are 95-year-old vineyards, so very old, from Rioja Alta. Did you say that's where yours was from too?
Mine's from Alavesa.
Okay, Alavesa. So there are 3 main regions in Rioja. Rio Alta is the most northern. Rio Alavesa is like sort of kind of like tucked between the 2 of them on the northeastern side, like sandwiched in there. And then Rioja, what used to be called Baja and is now called Rioja Oriental. So that is the kind of bottom area of those. There's not really a ton to distinguish them. Like I think I would only have known that about mine if I had looked it up. I don't think anything on the bottle is going to tell you where the regions are, right?
Yeah, well, sometimes, mine, I looked it up, so mine doesn't even say that either. But, well, I'll talk about it later. But the things that kind of distinguish them a little bit is, so supposedly the best wines are coming from Rioja Alta, or what used to be deemed as the best wines. Rioja Alavesa tends to be the highest altitude wines, and Rioja Baja or Rioja Oriental is kind of like the lowland wines. So they tend to be a lot riper, kind of like not as concentrated, kind of those make up the main part of bulk wines coming out of Rioja. So that's how I would talk about them.
So this one's also organically produced, which I thought was cool. I don't know. This all happenstance. Sloping soils, a calcareous clay. I hope I said that correctly. It's fermented in stainless steel tanks, and then it's a blend. It's primarily Tempranillo. It is 80% Tempranillo. Am I cutting out again?
No, I was just smiling. Right. Can I not smile?
Okay, 80% Tempranillo, 15% Graciano, and 5% Mozuela, which we will talk about also in a little bit. And then a couple things. So I wanted to say, we were talking beforehand, and I don't know if we have any plans to talk about this during the actual episode, but like Britt, yours says, like mine says Gran Reserva on it. Does yours says your designation, right?
Yeah.
Just to kind of point them out. Okay, Reserva, Gran Reserva. I know some people are drinking Crianza. I think Lauren's drinking a Crianza. And then we were also talking about this like back sticker a little bit, and just noticing like if you have a back sticker, which I think all of them should, but maybe some of them don't. I'm not sure. But you can kind of tell your designation sometimes from back there too, because it says it on there. So just want to point that out. Also, I corvined my first bottle ever. So did you see that? My cork is still in, and I got a glass.
Okay, I'm curious. Do you, now that you've tried it, are you like, oh, I'd open this bottle up like it's at its point? Or are you like, no, I'm glad I corvined it. I'm going to age it a little longer, or like talk to me about your thought process behind corvining and why you did it.
Yeah. So for those of you who might not know, a corvin is this like handy little gadget, and didn't want to do it on the show because I had never done it before, so I didn't want it to go like terribly wrong. But it has a needle, and the needle basically goes right into the top of the cork of the bottle, and then you can pour your wine right out through this little spout. And basically, the reason for the Corvin is like if you don't want to open a bottle and have it go bad, and like if you're not going to finish the whole bottle, or like I think it was invented by a rumor is, yes,
Yeah.
rumor is it was invented by a doctor whose wife was pregnant, and he didn't want to open all these amazing bottles when she couldn't drink with him. So that's very nice of him. He found a way to make sure that she could enjoy them later. But so in answer to your question, I decided to Corvin this. I do have 2 bottles of it, so I bought 2 bottles. So I like to open one early and then age one. And I happen to know, because I read a bunch of notes on it when I stored it, that it can age up to like 2030. So I think we still have a good amount of time that this bottle can age. Based on the acidity that's in here and stuff, I think it would still age well. The biggest reason for Corvining it today for me was, I don't know if I want to finish a whole, I don't want to finish a whole bottle today, but I also was like, oh, I think it'll be fresher. I had read that Riojas were, especially older Riojas, were not the best for decanting or aerating because sometimes they're too delicate, and when the oxygen hits them, it kind of like turns them faster. So I just thought, well, one, I should try out this beautiful Corvin that my friend Elise gave me for a birthday present, which was like such a badass gift. And I've never tried it out.
Never used.
Yeah, and I want to, but I'm like afraid of breaking it. So I'm like, you know what? Today is the day. So that's part
like,
of it. And then
that day where it's like, what is it called? Open a good bottle of wine or whatever. What's that day? One day a year, it's like open that bottle of wine day, where it's like, that bottle you've been saving, open it. That's what today was for your Corvin.
Yeah.
Break out that Corvin.
I've heard people say too, like sometimes the special occasion is opening the bottle. And I kind of feel like today the special occasion was like getting it all ready and watching videos on my Corvin and being like, oh, yay, I can take the plastic off of it finally. So that's why I use the Corvin. No particular reason, just because I was geeking out over here. So
nice.
I might drink this tomorrow with some friends, and that way that'll make it, worth Corvining or something.
Kelly is drinking a Campo Viejo Reserva 2015. I love that we're just seeing like these like deep ages in all of our wines. Like there's 2011, 2015. I'm drinking a 2013. You have a 2010. It's like, damn, there's some heavy hitters on here, and we'll touch on that a lot more later in the episode. So Caitlin, tell us what we can. Also, Caitlin, tell me what your wine tastes like.
Oh,
it smells.
Okay.
Tastes like. Tell it all.
So mine is so earthy. If I didn't know that this was a bad term to use for wine, and it usually means there's something wrong with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with my wine, but it almost has like a cardboardy, dirt, dusty, like it's not very fruity to me. It is definitely more in the earth camp, but I feel like it smells like raisins that were rolled in the dirt and then pressed into my glass. And I'm not mad about it. So it's great. What about you?
Mine has like this like saddle leather kind of smell to it, which I'm really into. It also does have a little like I can smell the fruit for sure, and mine is not like yours where it was kind of the Gran Reserva, although it was practically with how long it was aged, but kind of has that and a little bit of a plum, black plum. I would say it has that dustiness, and then it also has like a leather. Also, it has an incense, like almost like a little bit of incense to it. Anyway,
there's some flowers in mine too. Like there's some floral elements, which are really nice. Like a potpourri, dried flower, but not like fresh, like citrus blossoms, but like dried flowers, I don't know. I like it. I think this wine, the other reason why I Corvined it is because I think I want to have it with some food. And I was like, I can save it.
I might with food, but I'll probably just make the food after. So I gotta figure that out. But mine's really high in acid. And it's funny how they talk about how this is very Nebbiolo-like. And that's a kind of marker for this producer in particular, the Rema Uri. And it has like really high acid, but then it also has like that tannin as well. Yeah.
Okay, so Britt, why don't you tell us a little bit about the history of Rioja, or just in general, kind of like an overview, whatever it is that you prepared, history overview. What
Yeah.
is the deal with Rioja?
Okay, so I mainly prepared history, like how Rioja got to where it is today and like what is kind of why. So basically the Romans were the ones who brought um, vines to Rioja, and it was really because they were kind of like fighting a war. They were conquering all these regions, and so what they would do is everywhere that they would march, they would basically plant vineyards because back then water was not safe to drink because it wasn't that good. So it's like, so what are we going to do? We're going to drink wine, and it's because the fermentation and everything, it kills a lot of bacteria that's in the water, and so that is why you see like a lot of places that have like ancient wine is really because they were trying to solve this like sanitary water issue. So Romans really were the first ones to bring it there. And then what's really great is even after they moved on from there, even after they left that region, the wine industry still continued even through the Moorish reign, which is very unlikely. So the Moors, also known like as Muslims, who don't drink wine, but they saw this as like kind of part of the economy. So they're like, okay, we're not going to partake, but like, let's keep that going. So even when they were there, but it wasn't until like the monks came, surprise, surprise. The monks came and really like, and that was during the Dark Ages. They came and kind of like figured out all the best vineyard sites and all that. Cause we know monks have nothing to do but to like, slowly just figure out, yes, all of the best soils and everything for wine. And so that's kind of like a quick overview of how like in history it got into Rioja. But how we know Rioja in modern times is really from Bordeaux. And so I really want to focus a lot on that in this episode. Yeah. So what was happening was in France, the wine industry was really being decimated by phylloxera. And so I just love it. So fuck nationalism. Like they're like, we're done with French wine. All of the negotiants, all of the like people who were selling wine, they're like, we need to like capitalism trumps everything apparently. And so they're like, okay, we need to figure out how to keep like ourselves profitable. So they're like, where can we go? And so they went to Rioja. So where Rioja is located, and Caitlin might mention this about like there's like a bunch of mountain ranges, and basically phylloxera had not gotten to Rioja at all. And so all of these like French negotiants, these French like seller, like people who were selling wine came down to Rioja, and they're like, okay, we don't have any wine up in France anymore. We're going to show you how to make wine so that you can fulfill this like loss of like people in France still need wine. Let's be real. So what happened was Rioja took the place of French wine. And so you really see a modernization from that time period. And Luciano de Marietta was credited basically as for the person who started modern day like winemaking in Rioja. And he went to Bordeaux, and he came back like after being there, and in 1852 started the first bodega in all of Rioja. That's like what I had read in one place. One other place said a different person, who knows? But basically why it happened was because of phylloxera devastating France. They needed to find a like fill their insatiable need for wine. And so they came to Rioja. And what's really cool is that, kind of cool, I don't know, a lot of French negotiants actually stayed down in Rioja and started their own bodegas. Rather than buying French wine and selling it, they just stayed down there and started their own industry down there and bought Spanish wine and started selling it to other places around the world. So within one generation, the vineyards grew by 40,000 acres. That is mind blowing. Like one generation, 40,000 acres of vines is what increased in Rioja because of this need. So in 1901, phylloxera came to Rioja, and at that point, France had recovered. I know, I feel so bad. Although now that I've like talked to Mimi Castile, or I listened to one of her things, they had like phylloxera, and she's like,
Yeah.
you know what? We're just gonna keep it, and we're just gonna keep growing with these things. So I'm like, okay, maybe all these other people who like said like it devastated their land, it really didn't need to. But anyway, so in 1901, phylloxera came to Rioja, and at that time, France had already recovered from phylloxera. So it really destroyed 70% of all vineyards in Rioja. So not only did phylloxera come, but then World War I happened, the Spanish Civil War happened, the Great Depression happened, World War II happened. And there was even like this hunger throughout, like this kind of like famine throughout all of Spain. And they made the people of Rioja of all of Spain pull up their vines so that they could plant crops. So they could not catch a break. Like, let's be real. Rioja, Spain could not catch a break with the wine industry. It wasn't until the 1970s. So just to give you a range, 1901, phylloxera comes. 1970 is the first time that they're able to regain a foothold in the wine industry. 70 years that their industry was decimated. That's when 1970 is when they were able to regain footing back in the wine industry. And so you kind of like, but what was great is because those Bordelais came down during that early time, they had already revolutionized Rioja, and which is great, which you can see a lot with Rioja being kind of the most elegant and the most well-known, most renowned region in all of Spain. And it really has a lot to do with that. And you see it in a lot, you see it in their use of oak. You see it in their blends, like that Rioja is basically built on blends, very much like Bordeaux. So you see all of their influences and all of those things that have made Rioja the famous region that it is in Spain. Yeah, the first DOC in all Spain was in 1991. I'm like, that was like 30 years ago. That's crazy to me that was very so recent. What?
What was it?
It was Rioja. But Rioja was the first DOC in all of Spain. And then there is like, so like I was talking about how these practices came from Bordeaux, there is kind of like a bit of a clashing. I don't know if I'll say a clashing, but there's two types of thought process behind kind of like the kind of wines you're getting, modernist versus traditionalist. Are you going to talk about this? Great. Perfect. I have it written down and it was like question mark. So Caitlin's going to talk a little bit about that, and she's going to tell us a bit more about kind of those blends that you're tasting and basically what's in the glass. So tell me, Caitlin.
Yes. Okay. So before I get into that, there's like a delay. I don't know if it was happening for everyone, but okay. So before I get into that, I wanted to also say that the Rioja Regulatory Control Board was formed in 1925. So that was obviously in a time where like wines were still not quite recovered in Rioja, but they are the oldest governing body of any wine region altogether. And so when Britt's talking about like why Rioja, and she's talking about French people coming over from, France during phylloxera to make
Bordeaux.
it's because the place where Rioja is situated is only about, I think it's like 4 hours from the French-Spanish border. So I have a map. Lauren can pull it up since we're on it already. I see that she's already on top of it. So if you look up there, the orange area is where Rioja is. And then you can see that it's very close to the edge of France, like the border that's right above there. So there's a ton of French influence coming to this area. So it wasn't crazy for people to come from France into Rioja when all this was happening. So just to kind of like give you that little geography lesson, I honestly have such a hard time with geography. Half the time I'm like, what? How is this bordering what? But it's kind of cool to recognize, like when we talked about Alsace, we talked about the German-French border and how that was influential. But here, it's still a little further. It's like 4 hours, but you still get a lot of that kind of crossover. And then one other thing I wanted to add too is that what Britt mentioned, the monks and monks making wine in this region and kind of making it a lot more popular. It is on the El Camino trail, so the walking trail. So if you've heard of the what is it called, El Camino de Santiago, I think, like the kind of what do? You walk it for like a
pilgrimage. Walk it for, it's a pilgrimage. Yeah.
The monastery is like on the walking route, which helps populate this area as far as wine. Because I mean, monks, wine, people going there, they're like.
And when Caitlin says help populate, what you mean is help make popular. Like okay, cool. I'm like, I thought that's what you meant.
Yeah, like it helped popularize this area and the wines from this area, because it was such people were making this pilgrimage, walking. So they were like, it was on the way in that area. So that the Santo Domingo de la Calzada Monastery is on that walking route. So
okay. Also, like I remember I was listening to something where what would happen is people would like get wines while they were on the route, and then they were always the spots they would look forward to on it. And so then they were like, oh, if I'm looking forward to this, I should be like getting this wine. And so
yeah, like 66 for America. So yes, exactly, like Lauren says. Okay, so a couple things about the grapes and some of the characteristics that you're going to find. So in Rioja, you are getting mostly red wines. So 80%, I think it's at least 80% or more, maybe like more than that, are red wines. And they are based on Tempranillo. They are blended, like Britt mentioned, kind of this popularity of blends, although I think more people are making single varietal Tempranillos. But if you see a Rioja and it doesn't tell you what it is, because I don't think they have to specify the breakdown of the blend, but mine did. Mine says it on the bottle, but a lot of bottles might not. If you get a Rioja wine and it's red, the chances are that it's majority Tempranillo. So that's just something to be aware of. Like in the old world, a lot of times people don't label things by the grape variety like they do in, like, say, California. So if you go shopping for California wines, they're going to tell you like Cabernet Sauvignon or Pinot Noir or whatever. But if you go shopping in the old world, like Rioja means probably Tempranillo. So just kind of be aware of that. And then this is also partially modeled after Bordeaux because, like Britt mentioned, blends are very common in Bordeaux. There's actually like very few single varietals in Bordeaux. And because of that connection, that influence, we've got a lot of blends coming out of there. The other approved grapes that you can use that are red, so there's only a couple other approved grapes, and they are Garnacha, which is also Grenache. You know, mine has, no, does mine have it?
I think you said yours did too. Oh, no.
But it has the other ones. So yeah, Grenache or Grenacha. And there's a lot of questions about whether Grenache, which is recognized as a French wine a lot of times. If you were in our Rhone episode, we talked about GSM blends with Grenache as the main kind of lead on that. But people really do think that maybe they originated in Spain first and then became popular in France. So Grenache, and then Mezuelo, which is also referred to as Carignan. So the French call it Carignan, the Spanish call it Mezuelo, and other names, I think, as well, but that's the most popular. So I think that's what mine has that in it. So yeah, mine is 5% Mezuelo. So 5% Carignan, which is mostly historically been a blending grape. There are some people who are making it now, kind of bringing it back as a separate single varietal grape, but that's usually a blending grape as well. And then Graciano, which is what's in mine. So Graciano, 15% is in my wine. Also, I love Graciano. It is such a delightful grape. If you can ever find a single varietal Graciano, it is definitely worth tasting. It is delightful, and I feel like it's big and floral and just like all these wonderful elements. But generally, when you find it, you're going to find it in a blend. So Garnacha, Mezuelo, or Carignan, and Graciano are the three. I can count.
That's 4. Well, you're not counting Tempranillo? Okay, got it.
Yeah. And then to kind of break it down a little bit further, like Britt was about to touch on, there are 2 main styles, which also kind of fall into like 2 main schools of thought. So this is, when you're thinking about Rioja wines, it's helpful to understand kind of what people are wanting. in their grapes or in their wine. So there's the traditional idea of winemaking, and that is basically what I think Britt and I are probably both drinking, are more like traditional style wines, and those are characterized by long aging before they're released. So that's something that Britt's going to talk about when she talks about her section, but long aging, oftentimes American oak. And there's a whole part of the history of Rioja where American oak played into it because they were originally kind of trying to make wine with different kinds of oak. And they were like, you know what, we can save a lot of money if we buy this American oak and we do the like cooperage ourselves, whatever, take that process. So American oak became very popular in Spain. It's one of the places in the old world, actually maybe the only one I know of in the old world where American oak is central.
Yeah, and I think also because the Spanish had colonized America, like had been a pretty big colonizer of America. So then it was like, great, let's get some of this wood that we already basically own because we've colonized that area.
Okay, yeah. So traditional wines, long aging, American oak. I heard somebody, I feel like it was Karen McNeil from the Wine Bible. I think she referred to this style, this traditional style or mindset as like introverted wines. They're like more subtle. They're not like as in your face. She compared them to wines that are elegant, earthy, dirt-like aromas, which is totally mine, is like in that camp 100%. It smells and tastes like dirt, but in the best way. Like, I know that sounds weird. Chris made a comment earlier about like, yeah, I don't really want to drink that wine, but honestly, it is delightful. It's a quality that I really like in wine, which might sound weird. And then this traditional style can be kind of closer to like Pinot Noir than a Cabernet Sauvignon. It's like a lighter, a little bit more finesse, a little less like in your face. So that's one school of thought. And that's kind of like, as you might guess by the name, the traditional way of thinking of things. And then there is the modernist idea of wines from this area, or people are calling them the Alta Expresión, I think. I don't speak Spanish, I'm sorry. Oh, I said it kind of French, actually. I don't really know how to pronounce it. But these ones are much more ripe. So really ripe fruit, less aging. New French oak is very common on these. They're considered more of like an extroverted style, almost like a New World style, like maybe what you might find in like a California Cabernet Sauvignon, and less like a elegant, delicate Pinot. And they're powerful, dark and earthy. You get that leather, you get that peat, all of those kinds of things. So there's a lot of debate about which one's better. I was listening to a podcast where I think it was called Wine for Normal People, where the woman was explaining that she thinks that the wonderful thing about Rioja and Spain in general, but Rioja specifically, is that they really care about tradition. And there's something like they are making these elegant aged wines. And she thinks that we should leave that shit alone and not mess with it, not try to modernize it, just like keep that piece of history. And I think I'm in that camp. I mean, I like new, fun, modern styles as well. But as far as like Rioja, I think I'm in that camp. And then lastly, so that's kind of reds, which is the majority of what you're going to find in Rioja. Last thing about this is that there is a small amount of whites that are made in Rioja, and they're mostly made of what we call Viura or Macabeo in other parts of Spain. So Macabeo is one of the three main grapes that you use to make sparkling wine, cava, in Spain. But in Rioja, it's called Viura. It's very delicious. I actually really like Viura.
Me too. I feel like somebody was shitting on it, and I'm like, are you like, clearly you haven't had good Viura, is how I honestly felt when I was listening to that.
Yeah. And there are some styles, it's very hard to find, but there are some styles of Viura where it's like very oxidized and it's like a totally different beast in this area. But like a white Viura is like very nice. So if you ever have a chance to try one of those, please do. They're wonderful. I love this. Eric Asimov, I don't know if I'm saying his name wrong, but he is, I think, the New York Times wine.
Yes, yeah.
He called Viuras from Rioja, like white Riojas, basically. He called them Pinot Grigios with a brain. And I thought that was great. So if you want to try a Pinot Grigio with a brain, try a Viura from Rioja, a white style. They're delicious. Okay, so those are kind of what you're going to find in Rioja as far as characteristics, as far as like the schools of thought, as far as the grape varieties. Britt, do you have anything to add, and or do you want to jump into aging?
I think you did a great job covering the kinds of wines. Let me just tell you, like, snaps. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about aging. So you can bring that up, Lauren. Thank you for having that available. So it can take over the whole screen. This kind of is the wine aging breakdown. So generic, no aging requirements, also called Hoven, you might see on bottles. Those typically aren't like exported from Rioja. You won't see many of them in America, but you might. I don't know. Chris had a wine that didn't have aging on it, but I have no idea what that wine was when he sent it to us earlier. Anyway, the next one is Crianza. Crianza literally like translates into to be brought up or to nurse kind of. So it's considered a younger wine. It's fresh, fruity, aged for 2 years, with one of those years being in bottles. This has both the red and whites, but since red makes up most of the wines in all Rioja, that's kind of all I'm going to talk about really quick. The next one below that is Reserva. So Reserva is going to be kind of like, you know, a little bit more serious, a little bit, you know, as things age, in case you guys are wondering, as things age, they get kind of more nuanced. They get characteristics like, okay, so a young wine that's released is going to have really like fruity characteristics. And as wines get a little bit older, those fruit characteristics kind of aren't in the forefront anymore. And like secondary characteristics come forward, or tertiary characteristics. There we go. That being like kind of that earthiness that Caitlin was talking about, that like umami, that leather. Those are the notes that come out as wines age. So you can almost like, if you are ever sitting in a blind tasting and you're like trying to guess a vintage, that can be a good marker for you. So thinking about Crianza, definitely fruit forward, fresh, drink it early, like it porch pounder. Probably not a porch pounder because it's still aged, but Reservas, those are something that you're going to want to have with a dinner. And then like Caitlin's, the Gran Reserva. So that's going to be aged for 5 years at least, minimum. 2 years of that are in bottle and 2 years of that are in barrel. So in oak barrel. So like this episode is named Riojana Barrel Walked Into a Bar. It's really because barrel aging is something that is I think it's very unique to Rioja. Granted, barrel aging is all over, but being required by law and by like, just to give you an idea about how important barrel aging is in Rioja, they estimate that there are 1.3 million barrels in all of Rioja. Like, let's let that settle in. 1.3 million barrels. Okay. And part of me, like, this is why I love Riojas, and I'm sure Caitlin will talk about that, but specifically the aging. If you have tuned into any of our episodes, you will, on multiple occasions, have heard me say, I could not age a wine to save my life. So if I can't age a wine and I'm not rich as fuck, how am I going to do it? I'm going to buy myself some Rioja, because by law, they require aging. So they're going to do it for me. I don't know who has the fucking space to age something for that long. I'll be honest. I'm like, I think that a lot of winemakers, like when you see wines that are aged and they end up costing a lot more, it has a lot to do with the fact that they're storing that wine for you. Think about how much space that takes. Think about how much space that takes away from the other wines that they're making. That's a lot. Yes, temperature control. Oh, yes, Caitlin. And so Rioja, like, it is why it is a value wine. Like, you don't sleep on Riojas. Get yourself some fucking Rioja, because you're going to get a lot more than you're paying for, just because by law they have to age that. Let's pull up that thing one more time, Lauren. So Gran Reserva, like I was talking about, is going to be that other characteristics. The Gran Añada. God, I'm horrible. Añada has a lot more to do with sparkling, and that's actually a new designation that didn't exist before 2018. So these are new characteristics, or new like aging requirements for Rioja. So that one is 36 months, so 3 years. That's all sparkling wines that can be considered a Rioja Añada, Gran Añada sparkling wine. 3 years that it is aging on lees. So So Rioja has really built their reputation on that barrel aging. Like that is how they characterize, like how they basically like say, like, is this a quality wine? They're judging their quality based on that. One, it has a lot to do with blending because they blend. Unlike, okay, so if you've ever seen Burgundy wines, oftentimes they're named after vineyards, and you know their kind of quality level based off of what vineyard they're coming from. Granted, they will have like Premier Cru, Grand Cru, those kind of things, but with Rioja wines, their quality is based off of aging requirements. Like how old it is really going to tell you how prestigious it is. Yeah, there we go. But that is actually changing. So now they have introduced a new kind of designation where they can, and Lauren, can we pull that up? Look at this, like beautiful boob. I want to say I've definitely pulled that up in a past episode. I'm sure I have because I'm like, I think we talked about this before. But Rioja is kind of changing their
Make it full screen. I can't see it.
Yeah, make it full screen. Lauren.
Sorry. Sorry.
So kind of like the undesignated, the IGP is going to be out there in the little white region. And so then just a Rioja, a DO or a DOP is that little pink one. And as we're getting further and further to the nipple, we're getting like, obviously, maybe, it's like, ooh, it's getting a little bit more. Anyway, zonas. So like Caitlin was talking about, Rioja Alta, Alavesa, and Oriental. So those are going to be the next ones where you're going to start seeing that more on bottles. Me and Caitlin, how we both mentioned that neither of our bottles said that. We only knew it because we looked it up. Then municipales, so villages. Basically, if you've ever like had a Burgundy wine and it's a Burgundy village level. And then the final one, that very center of the nipple, is going to be single vineyards, vindo singular. And so it's a big shift it happened in 2018. This is very like the wine world is not something that moves fast. So the fact that this even changed, or not moves fast, but it's not a quickly changing thing, especially when you're thinking about the old world. So in 2018, when these new designations came out, it's supposed to appeal to basically think about Burgundy drinkers, like think about the money that comes from Burgundy. And that kind of mindset that we all have as younger drinkers or things like that it's like, okay, well, should we really be judging something on just its age, or should we be thinking about terroir and how that interplays with it? And so these single vineyard designations are a new thing that was introduced into Rioja. Not only that, but we're probably not going to see it for a while anyway, because it has these aging requirements. So that's why we're not seeing it on any bottles that are being released at this point. But beyond that, it is a question of whether or not that should actually be happening, because Rioja is built on this like foundation of blending. Mm-hmm. Then by making a single vineyard designate, are you really having a true Rioja? So it's like some people are saying like, I don't know why you're introducing this new thing. We're only introducing this thing to get like more, more market, to become a cult class, or to get the capitalism that I want. But because blending has always been so tradition of Rioja. So the question is does single vineyard even matter? Who knows? Time will tell. And I can't wait to see, and I'm here for it. So I'm like ready to get like a single vineyard designate from Rioja and see how it stacks up to a blend. Since it is like Bordeaux and it's based off of Bordeaux, those blends, who knows? Anyway, all right, Caitlin, why should we be drinking more Rioja other than all the reasons that I just gave it?
You gave some good ones. So, okay, a couple things I'll add to yours if you don't mind is I read Karen McNeil, again, from the Wine Bible. She's just a beautiful writer. So she has so many quotable, delightful nuggets. She says maturing a wine is almost a moral imperative for Spaniards. So it is
Okay,
like,
I was about to say, I'm like, God, Karen, I feel like I'm letting you down.
no, I just think that was a great way of saying it. Like the Spaniards are like, this is what we do. We mature wines. If you take that away from us, like that's like how they're on the worldwide wine scene. It's really amazing that you can buy, like I was telling Britt, I don't know if I said it on here already, but I bought this for $19 and it's a 2010 wine and I haven't even had it for that many years. Like $19 is amazing for like an 11-year-old.
Okay, I bought mine for a lot more, but can you believe that a 2013 is what is on the shelf right now? That's on the shelf. I'm just like, what?
And usually you would go in and you'd find like a 2017, a 2019, and I have like a 2010. So it's an amazing thing. And then let's see. Oh, I did learn, and I told Britt this too. I learned this today, and I did not know this before. Older Riojas, like mine, and probably many of yours, do not want to be aerated or decanted because they are already pre-aged. Yeah, $17. I know. Isn't that amazing? That's like
amazing.
Yeah, this is a great segue into my section of like why drink Rioja. But so older Riojas, like these ones, do not want to be decanted. They're a little bit delicate. If you decant them or you aerate them, you could lose some of that, like those beautiful qualities. So just kind of a little random tidbit for you if you're thinking about, an old wine. Maybe I should decant this. Maybe don't for this one. Okay, so why should you drink Rioja? I hope by now we've already convinced you why you should drink Rioja, but I'm here to like drive.
But in case we haven't, let us tell you why.
Yeah, I'm going to make that even more difficult for you. So, because I am a huge literature fan, and I'm sorry if my internet is pooping out. I'm a huge literature fan, as is Britt. I was reading something, and if you've read any Hemingway, you know that he was big on Spain, spent a lot of time there, bullfighting, all that jazz. But my personal favorite book of his that I've ever read is A Movable Feast. If you haven't read it, it's nonfiction, might not be your deal, but if you love reading about food and beverages, check it out. Anyway, he says about specifically Rioja and about wine. In Europe, then, we thought of wine as something as healthy and normal as food, and also as a great giver of happiness and well-being and delight. Drinking wine was not a snobism, didn't know that was a word, nor a sign of sophistication, nor a cult. It was as natural as eating, and to me, as necessary. And I just think, and the reason I bring him up is because he spent a lot of time in Rioja specifically, had a couple different vineyards there, drinking wine there, would return to them on a regular basis. So if you need another reason, let me give you another one. Value. So Britt talked about this. There is...
If Hemingway hasn't convinced you, let's let this other reason convince you.
Yeah, if Britt and I haven't convinced you, and if Hemingway hasn't convinced you, then value. So Rioja is considered one of the top 5 greatest red wine regions of the world. So there's not that many. That's 5, only 5. And
it's in there. What number was it?
I don't think it has a number, but I mean, what would you, I don't even want to like do this on the show. I feel like I'm gonna have to corrections corner myself next week. But I mean, we already talked about it.
Oh my God, tell me your top 5. Oh, I wish that was my question this week. What are the top 5 wine regions in your mind in the world?
So red wine specifically.
Red wines. Okay, red wines. I'm here for it.
Okay, so obviously we've got Bordeaux, Burgundy, we've got Rioja. I probably think that some people might include like Napa in that now.
Okay.
And then
I'm asking you yours.
Oh, my personal favorites?
Yeah, top 5. Does Rioja make the top 5? And if it doesn't, that's okay. But I want to know what your top 5 are.
Oh my gosh.
Only think red wine regions.
My gosh, this is so hard. I feel like Rioja probably would make that. I also love red wines from Priorat. That's another place in Spain.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure that would
be 2. Oh, wait, you're not sure it's top 5?
No. Maybe you should answer this question since.
Okay. I will say Burgundy for sure. I will put Bordeaux in there, even though I'm like, I can't afford Bordeaux, but I'm putting that in there. Piemonte.
Oh, Piedmont would for sure
My God.
number
Like,
one.
yeah, that one's there. Um,
Probably one of them too.
Rioja. I'll put Rioja in there. Last one. Where am I getting my like best red wines from? I'm like trying to think like where I buy my like what regions I buy a lot. Probably be
It's
another
hard.
Italian, honestly. What?
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard
Mm-hmm.
to think about it. But I mean, I don't know what
Rhone,
the
Rhone. Yes, Chris. Yes, Rhone is the other one. Rhone is the other, probably Northern Rhone, if I were to be real honest. But I'll put Rhone. Thank you for your. No, I think Rhone's above Tuscany, but yes.
No, I thought Rome would be in there. I was like, but it just seems like France has so many. I think personally, if it were my personal ones, I'd probably do Rhone, Burgundy, Piedmont, and then I'd probably do like some other place where they make real delicate wines, like somewhere, I don't know about Central Coast, but like something delicious, like where they make light wine.
I feel like Oregon has more delicate wines than California for sure.
Yeah, Oregon for Pinots, and then maybe I would do Rioja. So either way, Rioja makes the list for all of us, the official list and the Brit and Kate.
Beaujolais did not make your list. I'm like,
oh well, I don't know if I. It's hard because I love Beaujolais, but also it's in Burgundy for one, and Burgundy made my list.
I mean, yes, technically.
So I feel like Beaujolais, while it is like one of my top wines, I don't know if I'd call it like a fine wine region for reds.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's more like I want to drink this every day of the rest of my life. Red, not like especially.
That's why it's my fuck and not my Mary. Or maybe that's why. I mean, yeah.
Okay, so bottom line, not just Britt and I think this, but other people, fine wine experts that are way more expert than us, think that Rioja is among the top 5 greatest red wine regions in the world. It is also one of the best deals on wines if we haven't already cemented that in your mind. It is an incredible deal. Last year in 2020, Wine Spectator listed a Rioja red wine as their number one of like 100. I think it was 100 wines. Number one was a Rioja wine. And it was from Bodegas Marqués de Murrieta with a female winemaker. Want to mention that. And the crazy thing is, and this might not sound that crazy, but the cost of it is $139. So like $139 in the world of expensive wine is like peanuts.
Nothing.
Like, yeah. So I was just like,
well, that was the guy who they credit with the basically bringing the Bordeaux movement to Rioja.
And it's a female winemaker now. Isn't that so bad?
Yes.
Okay, so basically what we're saying is Rioja is the gold standard of wine regions, especially in Spain. So,
and I mean, if you're thinking about like how it made the top 5, not only did it make the top 5 of all wine regions, but then to be a like Portugal, love Portuguese wines. They're very value driven, but they're not the top 5 of the like what people consider to be the finest red wine region. So value and quality.
Yeah, value is crazy. So the other thing I wanted to mention too is I was listening to a lot of information about this one woman named Anna Fabiano. I might be pronouncing her name wrong, but she became like an ambassador of Rioja in general. And she wrote a book, and this is kind of interesting. I haven't read her book. I really want to read it, but she wrote a book about Rioja specifically. And she explained that the reason why she loves Rioja. She spent a bunch of time there. She's like awesome in all those ways. But she wrote a book on Rioja. And when people asked her why Rioja, she said, I was looking and there are like 80 something books on Bordeaux and none on Rioja. So like she wrote one. So there's like one book that focuses on Rioja and like 80 plus that focus on Bordeaux as a reference point. So it's crazy to me because that's why you get such great values is like people are not going in there looking for, oh my gosh, I don't know the name of the female winemaker, but it's Marqués de Murrieta is the wine.
Lauren put in Maria Varquez, so maybe that's it.
Correct. Thanks, Lauren. You got my back. I was like, oh yeah, it is Maria Varquez. I have it written down too. Thanks, Lauren. Yes. So it's just so cool. So just so you know, Rioja is like, you can get such great value because people really don't appreciate it. Like not no one, but people don't go to the grocery store or the wine shop and think like, oh my gosh, I want to buy a splendid wine for my dinner. I'm going to look for a Rioja, but they should because they're delicious.
Speaking of what you want to have it with dinner, do you have more to talk about why we should be drinking?
Okay, two more quick things. So architecture. If you are trying to think about planning a trip to Rioja, you should, because there's some world famous architecture there. The Marquez de Riscal was, I think I have a picture of this. The guy who, Frank Gehry, I don't know if I said his name wrong. Look at that building. That is like what kind of architecture you're going to find in Rioja in the middle of nowhere. It's like, I've driven through it. It doesn't look like it's this fancy place. And then all of a sudden you come across buildings like this. So architecture, it's an architectural hub. This guy also did the Guggenheim. So if you ever get to Bilbao and you get to go to the Guggenheim Museum. Okay.
I thought you would put Bilbao's Guggenheim because that one's crazy too.
Same architect though.
I mean, I believe it is.
Yeah. Okay. So last thing I'll say is, and this is a great segue, Britt, food. So the food in Rioja is known for being very simple, not overly produced, but very high quality ingredients. Like, for example, and I'll answer your question, wild mushrooms. You don't even have to listen to the show very often to hear about my affinity for mushrooms, but
almost as often as your affinity for cheese, but yeah.
Okay. Well, also goat cheese in this area is famous. So wild mushrooms, goat cheese, white asparagus is famous. Chokes too, which I'm like, yes, please. Small game. And then I had also read this dish called cabrito, which is baby goat. Don't be mad at me, but sounds delicious. And charcuterie. That's what this region is famous for. Like, come on. Architecture, wine, baby goats, and baby artichokes. Come on. Let's do it. So those are the reasons why you should love it. What I want to eat with mine is lamb. Rack of lamb.
You stole mine. That's what I was gonna say. I promise I was. So we're like on the same page, but also like don't be like, oh, Britton.
No, I won't. We should. I mean, we have the same taste basically. And then mushrooms. I want to eat all the wild mushrooms from this area. Just grill those, saute them with like some garlic and some butter, and I'm gonna put that with my wine. Earth on earth on earth. Okay, Britt, what do you want to eat with your wine?
Lamb. I'll have like one of those like, lamb lollipops. Actually, that honestly, I was gonna go make lamb after. I'm like, okay, I have this great recipe for like these lamb like chops that I make, or like lamb, yeah. Oh, so good. Allison Roman, love her. But yes, I'm going to make lamb after we get off this call. Don't you wish you were still here?
Yes, I do. I also, because I have no idea what I'm eating, and it might be like the ends of a sourdough bread loaf for dinner.
Well, to be fair, my lunch was the sourdough that you left at my house and a can of sardines.
Great. That sounds delicious.
And butter.
What? Always butter. Gotta have butter. What do you want to listen to with yours?
Ooh, okay. So Rioja wine is all about aging. And I'm getting older, but just like a fine wine, I'm getting better with age. So this song is by David Bowie. It's called Golden Years, and that's what I want to listen to while I'm drinking my Rioja wine. Yes. Well, I also love like the line, and I think that the beginning is so good that's why I did the beginning, but I love the line, and so I moved it a little bit, so I got the 30 seconds. But don't let me hear you say life's taking you nowhere. And as we move on in our lives, as things happen, I'm just like, you know what? Life's taken me somewhere, and just like this Rioja, like it got somewhere. So anyway, okay, what do you want to listen to while you're drinking your Rioja? Or what do you want to dance to?
This is like a little more sultry, a little more like rich, a little more, whatever. You'll experience it. It's by The Bad Eartha, which so good. It's like this whole song, yes, it's about wine. It's about lilac wine. Don't know what lilac is, but I do think this wine, it's like I feel unsteady. My mind is foggy. When I'm feeling sad, I drink a little more than I should or something. And I'm just like, you know what? Rioja, I just feel like you want
lilac wine? I mean, lilac is a flower. Like,
so that's why I'm like, I don't really think it's literal. I think it might just be like, but it's the feeling that you want. You want that feeling of like sultry, smoky.
Yeah, like sometimes there's some wines where I'm like, I know it wouldn't, but I'm like, this wine just feels like it goes with cigarettes and sex. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. It's like that's what my wine feels like it goes with too. So, yeah, I think it's great. And if you didn't know, we now have a Spotify playlist of most of our songs.
All of Caitlin's. Yeah, some of mine.
It's not because we don't like Brit songs. It's just because I couldn't find out which song she used. So as soon as we'll get them up there. But you can find it on Spotify. You can find it on our Instagram under our link tree if you want to look for our IPT Spotify playlist. It's pretty kick-ass, if I do say so myself.
And if you do follow us on Instagram, you definitely should. But if you don't, follow us. But if you do, save some of our stuff so that it shows up in other people's feed, because we really want this to get out to the masses. We love doing this show. We want to do it for everyone. We want to quit our day jobs and do this show. So like, let's make that happen, everybody.
Also, coming soon is a podcast version. So I know you all are probably our loyal viewers who like to see our bright smiling faces each week. But if you're not, and you just want to listen to us on the road, that is coming at you real soon.
You know what? Listen to our podcast and follow our Instagram. Then you see our bright smiling faces. Yeah. Okay, Caitlin, what's next week? Tell me all about it.
Malbec. Next week we're talking about Malbec. So you asked for it. We're bringing it to you. I'm really excited. It's another red wine that's kind of bigger before we get into like summertime. So, or just, not huge, but, red wine. I don't always want to drink Malbec in the middle of the summer. So
I definitely don't want to drink Malbec in the middle of the summer.
Yeah. So
I have a hard time drinking it any time of the day. So anytime. So yeah. I'm working on it.
It's going to be great. I'm really excited. I can't wait. Grab a bottle of Malbec from anywhere, but probably from Argentina. And also maybe France, if you can find it.
I was going to say, yeah, maybe go for the French one. Who knows?
So we love you.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. We really love it. We're here next week, same time, same place. And as always, stay thirsty.
I'm going to be thirsty because I'm almost out.
You got to use your Corvin again.
Oh, no. That's a good way to limit yourself when you just want to like cut yourself.
I know. You had one glass in this whole episode. No wonder you weren't as fun as I wanted you to be. I feel like I think that the anti-fun factor might have been me this time, but
Okay, here's the fun, I bring the seriousness and the fuzziness.
This is a serious wine. It needed serious attention. Next week, Malbec. See you then.
Stay tuned for more dance-offs. I think we're going to integrate that more into our Instagram. If you like our moves, good luck.